Wealthy businessman pretended to be blind for 4 years until he discovered his trusted partner's plan. Richard Thompson broke down in silent tears behind the dark glasses that hid his perfectly healthy eyes. For 4 long years, he had maintained this painful charade, feigning a blindness that never existed to protect everything he loved. It was when he heard the familiar voice of Thomas Wilson echoing through the company hallway, whispering something about, "Just a few more months and everything will be ours." Richard's heart raced. His partner of 2 decades, a man he considered a brother, was talking about plans that involved the destruction of his family. The Tuesday morning began like every other over the past 4 years. Richard carefully felt his way along the bedroom wall, simulating the struggle of a man who had lost his sight. Patricia, his wife of 30 years, watched his every move with eyes heavy with sadness. "Good morning, darling," she said, gently adjusting his tie. "Thomas is already here. He said he has important documents for you to sign today." "Important documents," Richard repeated, forcing a weary smile. "There are always important documents, aren't there?" Patricia sighed deeply. This elegant 55-year-old woman carried the weight of caring for a husband who had apparently lost his sight in a household accident 4 years earlier. What she didn't know was that Richard could see every tear that rolled down her face each morning. The accident never happened. It all began on a Sunday dawn when Richard unexpectedly returned to the office to retrieve some forgotten contracts. That was when he caught Thomas moving documents from his desk into a private folder. In that moment, instead of confronting his partner, Richard made a decision that would change his life forever. The following Monday, Richard called Patricia in a panic, reporting a fall down the stairs at home that had affected his vision. Rushed to the hospital, he convinced trusted private doctors to diagnose a serious condition that would require time for evaluation. Weeks later, with the help of carefully crafted medical reports, Richard Thompson was officially declared blind. "Mrs. Jenkins is waiting for you in the kitchen," Patricia informed him, gently guiding him through the mansion's hallways. "She made that special coffee you like." Mrs. Jenkins was the only person in the world who knew the truth. A family employee for 15 years, this 65-year-old woman had become more than just staff. She was the confidant who helped Richard maintain his deception, bringing him valuable information about Thomas's suspicious activities. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," Mrs. Jenkins greeted, pouring coffee into a fine porcelain cup. "Last night, that mysterious woman was at the office again with Mr. Wilson. They talked until very late." A chill ran down Richard's spine. Over the past few months, Thomas had started bringing a woman to meetings, introducing her as a legal consultant specializing in corporate matters. But Richard knew there was something far more sinister behind this collaboration. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The offices of Thompson and Wilson Construction occupied 3 floors of a commercial building in the Wall Street area of New York City. Founded by Richard's father and Thomas's father over 40 years ago, the company had grown from a small family-run construction business into one of the leading firms in the industry in the city. Thomas Wilson, a polished 42-year-old man, had always displayed an ambition that both impressed and worried Richard in equal measure. The only child of a father who passed away when he was still young, Richard was practically raised by the Thompson family, spending holidays and vacations at their home. "Richard, my friend," said Thomas, entering the office with a smile that Richard could perfectly perceive through the dark glasses. "I brought the contracts for the mall construction in Newark. I need you to sign them today so we don't miss the deadline." "Of course, Thomas," replied Richard, extending his right hand to receive the documents. "Could you read the key points for me?" It was always like this. Over the past 4 years, Thomas had gradually taken control of the company's operations, claiming he was protecting his disabled partner. But Richard listened to every word, memorized every detail, and noticed how certain information was omitted or twisted. "Just formalities," said Thomas, guiding Richard's hand to the signature line. "Standard figures, usual percentages, nothing for you to worry about." But Richard had developed an exceptional auditory memory. He could detect hesitations in Thomas's voice, subtle shifts in tone that signaled when something was being hidden. That contract didn't sound like a formality. "Thomas," said Richard, holding the pen without signing yet, "could you explain the profit distribution part again? My memory isn't what it used to be since the accident." The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough for Richard to sense his partner's contained irritation. "Same as always, Richard. 50-50. Just like it's always been. You trust me, don't you?" "Of course I do," lied Richard, signing the document. "You've been my guardian angel since the accident." As Thomas gathered the papers, Richard reflected on the last 4 years of his life. The sacrifice of pretending to be disabled had come at a high cost. He'd watched Patricia age prematurely, bearing alone the emotional weight of caring for a seemingly incapacitated husband. He'd seen his children, Jennifer and Michael, grow up and build their adult lives believing their father had lost a fundamental part of himself. Jennifer, a law graduate from Columbia University, had specialized in corporate law and worked at a prestigious firm in the city. Michael, a civil engineering graduate, had lived in Canada for 3 years, working on sustainable construction projects. Both returned to the United States regularly to visit their father, always with pitying looks that broke Richard's heart. "I have to go now," said Thomas, checking the gold watch on his wrist. "I have a meeting with the consultant about the corporate restructuring we discussed." "Corporate restructuring?" Richard asked, trying to sound merely curious. "Remember I mentioned modernizing the company's management, adapting our structure to new market demands," Thomas explained with forced patience. "Nothing for you to worry about. I'm handling everything." After Thomas left, Richard remained alone in his office. Slowly he removed the dark glasses and watched the bustling avenue outside the window. 4 years pretending to be blind. 4 years gathering information, secretly recording conversations, and building a detailed file of his partner's suspicious activities. The phone rang. Richard quickly put the glasses back on and answered in his usual controlled tone. "Dad?" It was Jennifer's voice. "How are you feeling today?" "Hi, sweetheart. I'm fine, just a little tired." "Dad, I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come by this afternoon?" "Of course, honey. Did something happen?" Jennifer hesitated before answering. "It's about the company, Dad. I found some strange things in the contracts Uncle Thomas asked me to review. I think you need to know." Richard's heart raced. His daughter had discovered something. After 4 years of deception, perhaps the moment of truth was finally arriving. "I'll be here waiting for you," said Richard, hanging up the phone with trembling hands. That afternoon, Richard received a visit from Jennifer in his office. His daughter, a determined 30-year-old woman, carried a folder full of documents. Her green eyes, inherited from her mother, shone with a mix of concern and indignation. "Daddy," Jennifer began, pulling a chair closer to him, "Uncle Thomas asked me to review some of the company's contracts. He said it was to make sure everything was legally sound." "And what did you find?" Richard asked, keeping his tone calm despite his anxiety. "There are some very strange clauses, Dad. Contracts where your share of the profits is being gradually reduced. And there's a new company created 2 years ago, listed as the beneficiary in several deals." Richard feigned surprise, but in truth, this information confirmed his deepest suspicions. "A new company?" "Wilson and Associates. Uncle Thomas is listed as the majority partner, along with a lawyer named Amanda Parker. Dad, they're diverting contracts from our company to this new one." "Jennifer," Richard said, weighing each word carefully, "are you sure about what you're saying?" "I have all the documents here, Dad. And there's more. I found correspondence suggesting they're planning something bigger. There are mentions of shareholder control transfer and management incapacity." Richard felt the moment had come to make a crucial decision. For 4 years he had gathered evidence alone. Now, his daughter had independently uncovered part of Thomas's scheme. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something very important," Richard said, slowly removing his dark glasses. Jennifer's eyes widened in confusion. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Jennifer, I'm not blind," Richard confessed, looking directly into his daughter's eyes. "I never was. It was all a ruse to uncover what Thomas was planning. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer stood frozen, processing the revelation. Tears began streaming down her face. "Dad, how? Why?" Richard explained everything. The discovery 4 years ago, his decision to fake the accident, the years of silent observation. Jennifer listened with a mix of shock, relief, and anger. "You let Mom suffer all these years?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "It was the hardest decision of my life," Richard admitted. "But if I had confronted Thomas that night, he would have destroyed all the evidence. This way I was able to map out his entire operation." "And now, Dad, what do we do?" "Now, my dear, we take back our company and our family." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The following days were filled with intense planning. Richard revealed to Jennifer the full extent of Thomas's scheme. For 4 years, he had recorded conversations, photographed documents, and compiled a detailed dossier on his partner's fraudulent activities. "Dad, this is incredible," Jennifer said, flipping through the meticulously organized pages. "You have proof of everything." "It wasn't easy, sweetheart. There were moments I almost gave up, watching your mother suffer, seeing you and Michael grow up believing I was helpless. It was the hardest thing I've ever done." Jennifer discovered that Thomas had created a complex network of shell companies to siphon funds from Thompson and Wilson Construction. The lawyer Amanda Parker wasn't just a consultant. She was the legal architect of the entire scheme. Together, they had developed a plan to gradually take full control of the company. "They plan to declare you mentally incompetent," Jennifer revealed, after reviewing recent documents. "There are falsified medical reports being prepared, claiming your blindness has affected your cognitive abilities." "When?" "At the next shareholders' meeting 2 weeks from now, Uncle Thomas will propose your legal incapacitation, arguing you're no longer fit to participate in business decisions." Richard smiled for the first time in months. Finally, after 4 years of patience, the time to act had come. "Jennifer, I need to ask you something very important. We can't tell your mother yet, or Michael. If Thomas suspects we've uncovered his plan, he might destroy evidence or speed up his timeline. But Dad, Mom is suffering. She deserves to know the truth." "I know, sweetheart, just a few more weeks. I promise everything will be resolved soon." In the days leading up to the meeting, Richard intensified his act. He needed Thomas to believe he was becoming increasingly dependent and confused. He began forgetting appointments, asking repetitive questions, and showing signs of mental decline that would justify his incapacitation. "Thomas," Richard said one afternoon, feigning confusion, "could you explain our payment system to me again? I've been having trouble understanding some things." "Of course, Richard," Thomas replied with exaggerated patience. "Don't worry, I'm taking care of everything for you." "You're an angel, Thomas. I don't know what I'd do without you," Richard said, watching the satisfied smile spread across his partner's face. Meanwhile, Jennifer worked discreetly to strengthen the family's legal defenses. She consulted corporate law experts, organized documents, and prepared a strategy for the moment of revelation. "Dad," she said in a private conversation, "I managed to trace all the companies Uncle Thomas created. 17 in total, all interconnected. He's embezzled over $20 million in the last 4 years. 20 million. Richard shook his head, stunned by Thomas's audacity. "And there's more, Dad. He's planning to sell our land in Stamford to a developer. The price is way below market value. I suspect he's getting an under-the-table commission." Richard felt a mix of sadness and anger. Thomas wasn't just a traitorous partner. He was someone Richard had treated like a son. They had built the company together, dreamed of grand projects, celebrated victories, and weathered crises side by side. The week before the meeting, Patricia noticed Richard seemed more distant than usual. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" she asked, adjusting his pillow as he lay down. "Just tired, Patricia. Sometimes I feel like I'm a burden to all of you." "Don't ever say that," she gently scolded. "You're the strongest man I know. The accident didn't change that." Richard held his wife's hand, feeling the weight of 4 years of lies. Patricia had visibly aged during that time. New wrinkles lined her face, and her brown hair now had streaks of grey that hadn't been there before the supposed accident. "Patricia, I need you to know I love you so much. More than you can imagine. I love you too, Richard. Always will, no matter what." The night before the meeting, Richard called Michael in Canada. "Son, I need you to come to the United States tomorrow. It's very important." "Dad, is something wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, son, but I need you here. There's something very important I have to tell you." "Of course, Dad. I'll take the first flight. I'll be there tomorrow morning." The morning of the shareholders' meeting arrived with cloudy skies over New York City. Richard woke before dawn, watching Patricia sleep peacefully beside him. In a few hours, the whole truth would be revealed. 4 years of deception would come to an end. Mrs. Jenkins served breakfast in silence, her eyes betraying the tension she felt. She knew this would be a decisive day for the family she had served with such dedication. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly, "may I say something?" "Of course, Jenkins. You did what you had to do. Sometimes to protect those we love, we must make sacrifices others don't understand." "Thank you, Jenkins. Your words mean a lot to me." Michael arrived from New York City early in the morning, straight from the airport. The 35-year-old had inherited his father's determination and his mother's sensitivity. Working in Canada, he had developed expertise in sustainable project management that would be invaluable for the company's future. "Dad, what's going on?" Michael asked, embracing Richard. Jennifer called saying it was urgent but didn't explain anything. "Son, sit down. I need to tell you a story that will change how you see the last 4 years." Richard repeated to Michael the same revelation he had shared with Jennifer weeks earlier. He showed the evidence, explained Thomas's plan, and prepared his son for what was about to happen. "Dad, you can see?" Michael asked, stunned. "Perfectly," Richard confirmed, removing his dark glasses. "And today, son, we're taking back our company." The general meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at the company's office. Thomas had invited representatives from major clients, suppliers, and even financial journalists, claiming it would be a meeting about the future of Thompson & Wilson. "It's an honor to have you all here today," Thomas said, effortlessly assuming the role of host. "We're at a crucial stage for the company, and important decisions must be made." Richard entered the meeting room guided by Jennifer, maintaining his usual act. Patricia was present, as was Michael, who had arrived at the last minute. Mrs. Jenkins had also been invited by Richard, though Thomas was clearly surprised by her presence. "My friends," Thomas continued, "we all know the difficulties my partner Richard has faced since the accident. As someone who considers him a brother, I've gradually taken on more responsibilities to protect the company we built together." Richard listened to every word, controlling the anger rising inside him. "Unfortunately," Thomas went on, his voice solemn, "Richard's condition has deteriorated. Recent medical reports indicate that, beyond blindness, he's developing cognitive difficulties that impair his ability to make business decisions." Patricia covered her mouth, shocked. This was the first she'd heard of cognitive issues. "Because of this," Thomas said, pulling documents from a folder, "I propose Richard be temporarily removed from company management, for his own good and for the sake of all employees and clients who depend on Thompson & Wilson." "Temporarily?" Jennifer asked, feigning surprise. "Initially, yes, but medical reports suggest his condition is irreversible." Amanda Parker, a corporate law specialist, stood to present the necessary documents for a smooth power transition. The elegant 40-year-old woman scanned the room with cold, calculating eyes as she explained the legal aspects of the proposed guardianship. "Guardianship is a legal mechanism to protect those who've lost the ability to manage their assets," she explained in a clinical tone. "In Mr. Richards' case, it's a necessary measure to preserve the family's assets and the company's stability." It was at that moment Richard decided to act. Slowly, he removed his sunglasses and rose from his chair. "Amanda," he said, his firm voice echoing through the silent room, "I believe there's a slight problem in your legal analysis." The silence that followed was absolute. Thomas stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock. Patricia brought her hands to her face, tears of confusion and hope instantly welling up. "Richard, You can see? Whispered Patricia. Perfectly, my love, replied Richard, walking to her and gently touching her face. And I've been seeing everything for these 4 long years. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Thomas tried to speak, but the words wouldn't leave his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, said Richard, taking control of the meeting, for 4 years, I pretended to have a blindness that never existed. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. I needed to uncover the extent of the plan my partner, a man I considered a brother, was developing to destroy my family and steal our company. Jennifer opened a folder and began distributing documents to those present. These are 4 years of meticulously gathered evidence, Richard continued. Recorded conversations, photographs of documents, bank records from shell companies created by Thomas Wilson and Amanda Parker to divert funds from Thompson and Wilson. Thomas finally found his voice. Richard, this is madness. You're confused, sick. You don't know what you're saying. I'm not confused, Thomas, Richard replied calmly. I'm perfectly lucid. Lucid enough to know you created 17 shell companies. Lucid enough to know you diverted over $20 million. And lucid enough to know you planned to declare me mentally unfit today. Amanda tried to head for the door, but Michael had already positioned himself strategically to block any escape. Miss Parker, said Jennifer, approaching the lawyer, I believe the Regional Bar Association will be very interested in your activities over the past few years. Richard walked over to Thomas, who remained seated, utterly defeated. Why, Thomas? Richard asked, genuinely hurt. You were like a son to me. We had a thriving company, a solid partnership. Why did you choose this path? Thomas lifted his eyes, and for the first time in years, Richard saw something beyond ambition in his gaze. There was regret, shame, and deep sadness. I always felt in your shadow, Richard, Thomas confessed, his voice breaking. Your father founded this company. You inherited the name, the prestige, the respect. I was just the junior partner, always would be. Thomas, you built this company as much as I did. Your name is on the door, the letterhead, the contracts. There was never any difference between us. There was, Thomas insisted. And when you went blind, when I thought you'd gone blind, I saw an opportunity to finally be recognized for what I could do. Patricia, who had remained silent while processing everything, approached Richard. Darling, she said, gently touching her husband's face, you pretended to be blind for 4 years. Forgive me, Patricia, Richard pleaded, holding his wife's hands. It was the hardest decision of my life. Watching you suffer, seeing our children look at me with pity, but it was the only way to protect our family. You deceived me for 4 years, Patricia said, tears streaming down her face. Let me care for you as if you were helpless, made me feel pity, compassion. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Richard knew this would be the most difficult moment of the entire ordeal. Patricia, I know I can't ask for forgiveness for something like this. I know I broke your trust in a way that may never be repaired, but everything I did was to protect you, protect our children, protect everything we built together. Patricia looked into her husband's eyes, those eyes she hadn't seen for 4 years. Slowly, she raised her hand to his face. Richard Thompson, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. You are the most stubborn, determined, and protective man I've ever known. I'm furious with you, hurt, confused, exhausted, but I'm also in awe of your courage. Patricia, no, she interrupted. Now you'll listen to me. For 4 years I cared for you thinking I'd lost the strong man I married. I felt pity, sadness, frustration. But today, I discovered my husband not only didn't lose his strength, he used it in a way I never imagined possible. Michael and Jennifer watched the scene, moved. After years of seeing their parents in a caregiver-patient dynamic, they were witnessing the reunion of 2 life partners. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. And now? Patricia asked. What happens to our family after all this? Now, Richard said, looking around the room at everyone present, We rebuild our company on a foundation of truth and trust." Thomas remained silent, utterly defeated. Amanda had tried arguing legal technicalities, but the evidence was irrefutable. Recordings of conversations where she and Thomas openly discussed the fraudulent guardianship plan, forged documents, bank records of shell companies. "Thomas," Richard said, stepping closer to his former partner, "I'll give you a choice. You can return all the embezzled money, transfer back to Thompson and Wilson all the companies you created, and walk away in peace, or we can handle this the hard way." "And if I choose to walk away?" "You sign the documents transferring your stake in the company to my children, return everything you stole, and disappear from our lives. In exchange, we won't press charges." Thomas glanced at Amanda, who shook her head, but he'd already made his decision. "Richard, I accept your offer, not because I fear legal consequences, but because I recognize I made the biggest mistake of my life. You gave me a chance I don't deserve." "Everyone deserves a second chance, Thomas, even you." The following weeks were a whirlwind of reorganization. Thomas kept his word, returning the embezzled funds and transferring the companies back to Thompson and Wilson. Amanda faced disciplinary action from the Bar Association and had her license suspended. Michael decided to return to the United States permanently to take over as vice president of the company. His expertise in sustainable construction brought a fresh perspective to the family business. "Dad," he said one afternoon while reviewing future projects, "what you did was incredible. 4 years sacrificing your own happiness to protect our family. It wasn't heroism, son. It was necessity. And I have a lot to make up for, especially with your mother." Jennifer took over the company's legal department, implementing strict controls to prevent similar situations from recurring. "Daddy," she said in a private conversation, "how did you keep up the act for so long? There were days I almost gave up, sweetheart. Seeing you look at me with pity, watching your mother grow older, caring for an invalid who didn't exist. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But was it worth it? Protecting our family, always worth it." The rebuilding of Richard and Patricia's relationship was gradual. Family therapy sessions helped process 4 years of lies and sacrifices. "Richard," Patricia said during one of these sessions, "I'm still processing everything. For 4 years, I was married to a man who didn't exist. The blind, dependent, fragile Richard. He never existed." "He did exist, Patricia. Maybe not physically, but emotionally I felt blind many times. Blind from the pain of deceiving you. Blind from the guilt of seeing our children suffer. How can I trust you again?" "You can't," Richard admitted honestly. "Trust will have to be rebuilt day by day. All I can promise is that there will never be lies between us again." Mrs. Jenkins was promoted to house manager. Her loyalty during the difficult years was recognized by the family. "Mrs. Jenkins," Patricia said one afternoon, "thank you for taking care of all of us these years." "Mrs. Patricia, I only did what I had to do. Mr. Richard was protecting the family the best way he knew how. I just helped where I could." "Did you know from the beginning?" "From the very first day. But I understood he had his reasons, and now I see he was right." 6 months after the revelation, Thompson and Wilson Construction was stronger than ever. Michael's projects attracted new clients interested in sustainable construction. Jennifer's legal expertise ensured more solid and protected contracts, and Richard's return to active management brought back the experienced leadership the company needed. "You know, Patricia," Richard said one evening as they walked along their home's porch, "during those 4 years, I learned to appreciate things I once took for granted." "Like what?" "Like seeing you smile, like hearing our children laugh, like being able to look into your eyes and tell you I love you." "Richard Thompson," Patricia said, stopping and looking into her husband's eyes, "you are an impossible man. Stubborn, overly protective, capable of absurd sacrifices. But you're my impossible man." "Does that mean you forgive me?" "It means I'm learning to love the complete man you are. The strong and the vulnerable, the protector and the fearful, the Richard who sees and the Richard who sometimes goes blind from emotion." A year later, The Thompson family threw a party to celebrate the company's renewal. Clients, employees, and friends gathered in the modernized offices of Thompson & Wilson. "My friends," Richard said, addressing the guests, "the past year has taught us that family and business are built on trust. When that trust is broken, whether by ambition or overprotection, everyone suffers." Patricia stood beside her husband, radiant in a blue dress that brought out her eyes. Michael and Jennifer flanked their parents, representing the promising future of the family business. "But we've also learned," Richard continued, "that with love, patience, and hard work, it's possible to rebuild what was damaged. Our company isn't just recovered, it's stronger. Our family isn't just reunited, it's closer than ever." Mrs. Jenkins watched from the crowd, proud of the family she had helped protect through difficult years. "I'd like to take this opportunity," Richard said, "to make an important announcement. Starting today, I am passing the executive presidency of Thompson & Wilson to my children, Michael and Jennifer. I'll remain as board chairman, but it's time for the new generation to take the lead." The room erupted in enthusiastic applause. Michael and Jennifer embraced, moved by their father's trust. "And now," Jennifer said, taking the microphone, "we'd like to announce our first project under the new leadership, the Richard Thompson Foundation for the Support of Visually Impaired People." Richard was stunned. His children had prepared this surprise without his knowledge. "Dad," Michael explained, "you spent 4 years living as a visually impaired person. Even though it was a sham, it gave you a unique perspective on the challenges these people face. We want to channel that experience to help those who truly need it." Richard felt tears well up in his eyes. After years of pretending to have a disability out of necessity, he could now use that experience to genuinely help others. "My children," he said emotionally, "you've just given a positive meaning to the hardest years of my life." The celebration lasted late into the night. Conversations, laughter, and plans for the future filled the air. Richard watched it all with deep gratitude. He had regained his family, his company, and his integrity. By the end of the night, only the family remained in the office. Patricia was tired but happy. Michael and Jennifer were organizing the final details of the event. "Dad," Jennifer said, approaching Richard, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Do you regret anything?" Richard thought carefully before answering. "I regret the pain I caused your mother and you. I regret having to lie to protect our family, but I don't regret protecting you. I'd do it all again if I had to, even knowing the price you'd pay. Honey, no price is too high when it comes to protecting the people we love." Patricia stepped closer to her husband and took his hand. "Richard, for 4 years I thought I was married to a fragile man. Today I know I was married to a man who pretended to be fragile so he could be stronger than I ever imagined possible. Patricia, you're the love of my life, yesterday, today, and always. And you're my impossible hero, Richard Thompson." Michael joined the family, embracing everyone in a gesture of unity. "Dad, thank you for teaching us that sometimes true strength comes from appearing weak. And thank you for showing us that family is the most precious thing we have," Jennifer added. Mrs. Jenkins quietly approached the group. "Mr. Thompson, may I say something?" "Of course, Jenkins. You're the bravest man I've ever known, and this family is the most special one I've ever had the privilege to serve. Jenkins, you're part of this family, always have been, always will be." 2 years later, Thompson & Wilson had become a leader in sustainable construction in the United States. The Richard Thompson Foundation had already helped hundreds of visually impaired people. Michael had married Sarah, an environmental engineer who brought fresh ideas to the company. Jennifer was engaged to Brian, a human rights lawyer. Richard and Patricia renewed their wedding vows in an intimate ceremony, symbolizing the rebirth of their union after years of trials. "Patricia Thompson," Richard said during the ceremony, "I promise there will never be secrets between us again. I promise we'll face every challenge life brings us together, and I promise to love you with honesty and transparency for all the days I have left." "Richard Thompson," Patricia replied, "I promise I'll always believe in your ability to protect our family. I promise we'll weather every storm together, and I promise to love you, knowing now both your strength and your vulnerability." The kiss that sealed their renewed vows was filled with emotion beyond words. It was the kiss of two partners who had faced the greatest trial of their lives and emerged stronger. Thomas Wilson was never seen in the city again. Rumors said he had moved to the countryside, where he worked as a consultant for small businesses. Amanda Parker permanently lost her law license and faced criminal charges for document forgery. During a family gathering at the office 3 years after the truth came out, Richard reflected, "You know, during those 4 years, I learned that true blindness isn't the absence of physical sight. The true blindness is failing to see the value of the people we have beside us." "And true vision?" asked Patricia. "True vision is realizing that family is the only treasure that truly matters. Companies can be rebuilt, money can be recovered, but family is irreplaceable." Michael raised his champagne glass. "A toast to the man who pretended to be blind to see the truth. A toast to the woman who stood by me even when she thought I was lost," replied Richard, looking at Patricia. "A toast to the family that emerged stronger from its greatest trial," said Jennifer. "A toast to the Thompsons," Patricia concluded. The glasses met at the center of the table, sealing not just a toast, but a promise that from then on they would face everything together with honesty and love. Outside, the city of New York buzzed with its characteristic energy, but inside the office of Thompson & Wilson Construction, a family had found peace after years of storm. Richard looked out the window, silently grateful that he could see not just the urban landscape, but the promising future he had built for his family through sacrifice, determination, and a love that overcame all adversity. The white cane he had used for 4 years was now framed on his office wall, not as a symbol of weakness, but as a reminder that sometimes you must accept appearing vulnerable to protect what truly matters. Patricia approached Richard and took his hand, intertwining their fingers as they had done for over 30 years. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I'm thinking it was worth it," Richard replied. "Every day of pretense, every moment of pain, every tear I shed in secret, it was worth it because our family is here, whole, united, and stronger than ever." "And now, what's the next chapter of our story?" Richard smiled, watching their children excitedly discussing new projects for the company and the foundation. "Now, my love, we live the rest of our lives knowing there's no obstacle we can't overcome together." And so, Richard Thompson, the man who pretended to be blind for 4 years to save his family, finally found the peace he had sought through so much sacrifice. His story became legend in New York's business world, not as a tale of revenge, but as proof that family love can inspire the greatest acts of courage and determination. Thompson & Wilson thrived under the new generation's leadership, always guided by the values of honesty and family unity that Richard had protected so fiercely. Whenever they faced a challenge, Michael and Jennifer remembered their father's example. Sometimes, to protect what we love, we must be willing to make any sacrifice. Patricia grew old beside the man she loved, knowing now that his strength had never faded. It had simply manifested in a way she never imagined possible. And Richard spent his golden years surrounded by the family he had fought so hard to protect, certain that his choices, no matter how painful, had been worth every moment of suffering. End of story. Now, tell us what you thought of this touching story and where you're listening from. Do you believe Richard made the right decision by pretending to be blind for so long? Share your honest opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartfelt stories like this one.